The journey is conversations with ordinary people about stories of transformation and how we may have had setbacks in our life and how we persevered through those, how we've learned from those obstacles, and how they've maybe helped us on our path today.
Well, welcome to The Journey. My name is Kevin Polke, and I am the host of The Journey. And we have a special return guest with us today, Ralph Velasco. And he has been on The Journey. It was actually the last time, as we were talking, Ralph, you came on pre-pandemic. That was when we were meeting in person at the studio. And then, of course, when the pandemic happened, everything shut down. We figured out how to do everything via a virtual world. And even though the pandemic is behind us, this is one of the things that we've continued doing it this way. So, well, welcome back to The Journey, Ralph.
Thank you so much for having me back. I appreciate it.
No problem. Well, one of the things, I wanted to have you come back on because you have been, you've transformed over the last few years since the pandemic as well. And I want to have the audience get to know a little bit more about what you're doing now since when you were on in 2019, and then what you may be doing in the future as well. So Ralph, before we get started, just to kind of let the listeners know when you have an opportunity for fun and traveling is obviously a big part of that. What do you do for fun, Ralph?
Yeah, I because I'm on the road upwards of 8 or 9 months out of the year, moving around a lot. When I'm not traveling, I tend to move around less. So I enjoy relaxing and reading and catching up on movies and series and things like that. I mean, those are the things that I kind of let me relax. So it's not moving around so much because that's what I do all the time.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the downtime for sure.
Sure, sure. And if we took a sneak at your bookshelf of the books you're reading or have read, what would be some of the types of books that you read, or what kind of stands out to you that you read recently?
Yeah, I like a lot of self-help and biographies. And you turned me on to the Founders podcast, right? Wasn't that
Yep,
you?
yep,
Yeah,
yep, yep.
fantastic. So I've been going down that rabbit hole quite a bit. So podcasts are another thing that I do a lot. I listen to podcasts while I'm doing other things, driving, stuff like that. But yeah, I love biographies and anything that's sort of self-help and encouraging and being able to learn from other people and their mistakes. So I've always tried to do that.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I just got in over the weekend. I ordered like as Diane would say, like, you need another book, Kevin. Um and I ended up I was looking for something else on Amazon, and I came across Bill O'Reilly's book on the presidents. And he broke down each of the presidents from Washington up to Obama. He did do a chapter or a little section on Biden and Trump, but because they're by the time this book was published, Biden obviously still in office and Trump is going for another term, and so their story isn't finished yet. So he said, as a try to be as accurate as possible historian, you can't write a you can't in this particular book about legacy, you can't write those while they're still unfolding. So yes, I can get lost. I think I read, last night before I went to bed, I was reading about President Grant. So yeah, I'm a history person as well. So, well, good deal. So tell us a little bit. So, kind of bring our audience up to speed. When you first started doing your traveling, you were doing a thing called a photo enrichment. And maybe tell us a little bit about that. And then what has it evolved to now?
Yeah, so for the past 16 years, full time, I've been organizing and leading small group trips around the world. And I started out the company as photo enrichment programs, and then it changed to photo enrichment adventures. And they were more photography based. So it's around teaching people how to use their new digital cameras overseas and get some really nice travel photography. So I really enjoyed that, but it's a lot of work for me, the tour leader. It's one thing if you go on one trip a year and you do this because it tends to be every sunrise, sunset, and imagery views and photo walks and just constant photography for a week or two. And that's hard to do even for one trip. But when you're leading 10 trips or 12 trips like I am, I found that it was unsustainable. So I've started to move away from the photography part, and we're all some sort of photographers. We've all got our digital cameras and stuff, and most of us like to take some sort of pictures. But so I've transitioned those trips into more cultural tours. And of course, we're taking photos and videos while we're there. So I'm helping people when they want. But it's more casual. And the truth is, I'm trying to appeal to more people, people that aren't necessarily interested just in the photography part of it, but the food and people, wine tasting, the culture, music, things like that.
And I know one of the things, when we've talked about it different times, it seems like, like maybe explain a little bit about like what's unique about your trips versus someone going to, Camelot and being part of a group, a national or international group that, they take a big bus over or whatever it may be. What may be a little bit different or unique about your like if you're bringing a group over to France or Spain or Cuba or even behind you Antarctica. So
Yeah, so our trips are different in that they are typically only 6 to 10 people. Depends on the trip, that can vary. So 6 to 10 participants. I am on every trip, pretty much every trip. There's a few that I don't go on, but typically it's me leading every trip. So I'm there with the client. So you know that the owner of the company is there with you, making sure everything's right. And so the trips again are small groups. The owner of the company is with you. They're all have been previously vetted. So I've scouted every trip. I've met the guides, gone to the restaurants, done the activities, stayed at the hotels, and then I put the trip together. So you know that I've vetted everything. Um, so these big bus tours where there's 25 to 50 people, you're not going to know everyone. People are going to be from all different parts of the world, which is nice. But this way, it's more of a cohesive group. Everyone knows each other to some extent before the trip because I do, virtual meet and greets, and we have Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups. So people start to get to know each other before the trip. And then when they're on the trip, there's already that camaraderie there. And that's
sure.
something I started about 8 or 10 years ago, that has really helped a lot. So instead of like arriving in the place and starting to get to know people, we are, have some sort of relationship with them before. And because I have such a high return rate, over 50% of my clients repeat. Like I've got a trip to Lapland coming up, Finnish and Swedish Lapland, and I want to say 7 out of 8 of those people have traveled with me before. So they start to get to know each other from different trips, maybe if they've been on several trips with me. And there's just a lot of camaraderie and networking. And it's fun because the trips are about a half day scheduled, half day free time. So you've got some free time to do your own thing, or maybe connect with someone else on the trip, or go out with your spouse or a friend that you brought along and do your own thing. So it's a really nice balance of a framework of a scheduled itinerary, but yet there's plenty of free time for flexibility and doing your own thing.
Sure, sure, absolutely. And especially now that you've moved a little bit, away from the focus and more toward this experience that you've been doing. What's been some of the, when you talk to your return clients or clients that have been on, what's some of the feedback you get about what they like about this? Because I imagine some of them were individuals that were on the photo trips as well, and a percentage of them probably followed you. So yeah, what's some of the feedback that they give you, that why they keep coming back, and what is it that they what is the uniqueness about your trips are?
Yeah, so I'm sure I lost some people that were looking for photo workshops. There are people that just want to go on photo workshop type trips, and that's great. I knew I was going to lose a percentage of those people, but I was always going after the more casual photographer anyway. So that wasn't too bad. But the people, I think what people love about my trips is the small groups and the fact that uh, the people that come on my trips are just the best. And, I might be biased, but they really, I think they come on my trips because of me. I tried to start doing some trips where I wasn't the leader. Maybe I had sent someone else as a leader. And I tried that 3 different times and it never worked out. I think I just developed a relationship, or people just a reputation that people want to be with me, the leader. I hope that doesn't sound it's too unhumble, but they know me. They know me, and it's like traveling with a friend. So if I'm not there, it's all of a sudden it changes the dynamics a little bit. But I think people really appreciate that. They like the idea too, because my clients tend to be pretty well traveled. So they're typically not that interested in doing I don't know, in Italy, Rome, Venice, Florence, main sites. So they've probably already done some of those things. So they're looking to get off the beaten path. And that's very easy to do even in and around those places. And that's what I specialize in. I like to come up with interesting, unique experiences, meeting locals in their places of businesses, potentially even in their homes, having a cup of tea or a lunch or some way to get to know the locals. Because to me, that's what travel is about. It's the locals. I mean, that's why I go to these places. Sure, there's wonderful scenery and food and everything else, but when it all comes down to it, it's the people.
And I think, over the years when you've told me about the trips, and that's probably what's intrigued me the most is, like I think of, like, if Diane and I were going to go to somewhere in Europe, the yes, I wouldn't mind seeing some of those things I've never seen before, but I also don't want to get caught up in, being trapped in the tourism aspect, the tourist piece of it. And I would much rather, like you said, go off that beaten path, get to know some of the locals, and get to, actually have conversation and not be one of hundreds of people, looking at it, or thousands of people looking at the same thing. So no, I can definitely appreciate that. So I know you had some pretty unique trips, and it's probably a completely unfair question to even ask, but if there was a place that kind of really intrigued you and maybe even surprised you, by it was bigger or better, or a deeper meaning than you actually ever thought it was going to be, what any trip stands out to you?
Well, this one right here, if you could see my screen, uh,
Sure.
you see the iceberg there as my background. I went to Antarctica for the first time this past year, and that just blew me away. It was absolutely spectacular, and you realize how far off the beaten path you are, and that you're on the bottom of the earth. And although I felt very safe because we had this beautiful ship that we would go to every day, or stay on every night, of course, but it was the smallest ship in the industry. So it's only 67 participants on the ship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so really small. And there's a treaty down there that only a maximum of 100 people can get off at any one landing. So our whole ship was able to get off at any landing we went to, but other ships that I don't know what the maximum size of the ships are down there, but there's got to be ones with thousands of people and they can't get off at those spots. You know, they either just wave at them as they go by or they get off in shifts. I don't know what they do, but that's why I chose this company to travel with. Number one, we fly down from Punta Arenas, Chile to the continent. So we're not spending the 2.5 days each way on a ship over the notoriously rough Drake Passage, where these three oceans come together and there can be upwards of 50 to 100-foot waves. And even if you're on a huge ship, you're going to feel those. One of the people on my trip last year, it was his second attempt to get down to Antarctica because someone died on his first attempt. He was on a bigger ship. They were crossing the Drake Passage, and I think what happened is the man was walking down one of the hallways of the ship and must have got slammed against the side and had a head injury from the wave action. So just terrible. So that trip was ended, of course. So the guy, my client never got to Antarctica, actually. So he came on my trip, but he told that story. And I've had another client who her roommate got thrown off the bed and broke her arm, and my clients had a problem too. So it's just stories like that that I was like, okay, I want to go to Antarctica, but and I'm a sailor. I race sailboats and stuff. I love the water, but that didn't interest me at all. So when I found this company that flies down and is the smallest ship in the industry, we spent 5 nights on the continent down there. I said, okay, that's the company for me. So
So
out of this world.
and so and this is obviously not knowing the answer to this. So if the ocean is that where the Drake Passage where it becomes that wavy and that tumultuous, is that all season is that all year round, or is it just because the nature of where all three oceans are coming together?
Yeah, it comes and goes. So they call it either the Drake Shake or the Drake Lake because it can be so calm that it looks like a lake. But you just never know. And we of course go down there in our winter, their summer. So the Southern Hemisphere summer. So we go in sort of the first quarter, like December to March or so is the season to go down there. And yeah, but those three, so South America comes down at a point here. The Antarctic Peninsula comes up, and then the three oceans come together in this very narrow passage that's, they're all going different directions, and that's why you get that wave action.
Gotcha. And then how, like when you were flying over that area, was there a lot of turmoil or turbulence as well?
No, air turbulence, not at all. But we could look down and see the sea, and you could see some white caps and things like that. But
Sure.
yeah, the turbulence was fine. And we fly down on what is, I believe, like a 75 to 80 person airplane. It's got flight attendants. You get lunch on the way. I mean, it's a proper airplane. This isn't some puddle jumper.
Sure.
Yeah, and so you fly down to one of the military bases, get to the ship, and then the trip starts, and you're 5 nights on the ship.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that definitely sounds like well, it definitely sounds like the right way to go is that not try to take it, a ship across that. And but it does sound like a pretty exciting opportunity, like you said, to see something that, only a handful of people, have ever seen or experienced. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think I figured that 0.005% of the planet has ever been to Antarctica. And so that's a pretty exclusive group. And yeah, you realize how far off the beaten path you are. There's no, cell towers or fences or any man-made objects whatsoever except your fellow travelers and the ship itself. So it's
Wow.
really spectacular. It's quiet, you don't hear airplanes or traffic or anything like that. That's what really struck me.
Interesting. So that kind of leads me into one of the projects I believe you started in 2024, or maybe the toward the end of 2023, and you started doing writing some books. And I know one of the books, well, they all kind of go together, they're all travel companion books, but you really sparked my interest with the book called The Mindful Traveler. And so maybe tell us a little bit about the three books, and then but especially the mindful traveler, because you kind of touched on it just a second ago about with Antarctica, how you noticed that how things were so much different with not the man-made noise.
Yeah. Yeah. So this past year, 2024, I wrote three books that came out. They're all in a series called The Mindful and Intentional Traveler. And this is a concept that I've had in mind since I was, I think, 16. And spent a summer in Peru as a volunteer. I was with a group of boys from my high school, and there was 9 boys and 4 teachers, or actually priests. Some of them were priests on our trip because I went to an all-boys Catholic high school. And after it was a 6-week trip, and after a week or two, as you can imagine, you got 9 16-year-old boys, and we started complaining. We're missing our beds, our parents, our mother's food, and our friends and family, and all that stuff. Typical. And one of the priests kind of sat us down, and he said, "You know what, guys? You've got this incredible opportunity to be literally on the other side of the world, learning about this place and its people, helping, but more than anything, getting more out of it than you're helping, I'm sure. And be here now."
Mm,
And those 3 words stuck with me all this time. But they never really hit home until I got older. And I've been traveling pretty hardcore for the last 16 years, like I said, 8 or 9 months on the road. And so the older I get, the more I've traveled, the more I appreciate slow travel and just taking it all in, not doing the tourist thing. Um, I I'm lucky. I've been well traveled. I've had a lot of opportunities to get around the world, so I've seen a lot of different things. But the more I get older, the more I appreciate the downtime and just being in a place, sitting in a cafe, watching the world go by, sitting in a pub and having a beer next to some old timer and talking about his life, and sitting on a bar stool that's older than the United States of America, and just those kinds of things really turn me on. And so that's kind of where this idea came from, being more mindful and intentional. And what I mean by that is just being more present. Again, that be here now. Our digital devices have really it's been good and bad, as we all know. Has their pros and cons. They're made to take us away from where we are.
right.
That's what they're made for. And they're great when you want to do something, like you're watching TV and you want to look up an actor or something. Those devices are fantastic. But when you're in a beautiful place, and I was on a trip recently with a friend of mine, and he spent the whole time just like on Facebook Live with his family back home, just like showing them and telling them everything that he was seeing and doing. And that's great. I'm glad he was excited about the trip, but he was missing out on the trip itself while he's trying to convey to his family the trip he's on. So it's those kinds of things where um my suggestion in the books is to simply, every now and then, maybe every couple hours each day when you're traveling, or this doesn't have to be a travel thing. You can do this in your own home or backyard. Um, but it's about stopping, looking, listening, hearing, seeing, touching, feeling your surroundings. And that might be as woo woo as, walking up to some fortress from the 12th century and feeling the stones and, just kind of wondering who made these and what went into it and all the backstory.
Mm.
That just fascinates me. And so that's the idea of these books is to be more mindful, intentional, and more present with your travels or your life, with our lives, wherever we
Well,
are.
I think, what I liked about the idea and liked about the, mindfulness is that so many times, we, especially when it's called, when we're traveling, that we think it's about the destination. And I know we've had numerous conversations about how to either in with your clients in a group or and be intentional with them there or in everyday life, that it isn't just about the destination, it's about the journey along the way and what you experience along the way. And because there's things that you're going to see, to smell, to hear, to feel, to taste, that if your eyes are and senses are wide open, you'll be able to capture those moments. And I know that, I remember, when my son was playing football and they wanted me to videotape some of the plays. I watching the game through the lens for me was different than watching the game without the lens of the video, right? I mean, and I it was important that we videotaped it and all those types of things, but it wasn't the same experience of watching the game without the camera in front of me. So I definitely think and to me it's an ongoing practice. The more that I practice being present and being mindful, the easier it is for me to intentionally do it when I'm when I'm in a unique and special place, but then also how am I doing it even like right now in the ordinary moments? How can I be present and be mindful in those ordinary moments? Because maybe there isn't ordinary, maybe it's always spectacular. It just happens to be in a different setting.
Yeah, it's about setting those expectations, and I love that idea. Of course it's about the journey. And I'm looking, you talk about the looking through the lens at the video, and I'm a photographer, so that was another big part of this is that photographers are the worst at being present because we go to these beautiful places and I look back on them like, yeah, I've got some great photos and I got the receipts and I've got the passport stamps, but was I truly mentally there? Because all I remember is holding that camera up to my face and looking at it through a viewfinder.
Yeah.
So it's about balance, and yeah, we want to get those photographs and video, but we also need to be there just mentally. And so that was a big reason that I wrote this book, is because as a photographer, I'm one of the worst at being present because that digital device is almost always with me. So I'm encouraging people to maybe set a timer for every couple hours to again look, feel, touch, just to physically stop and tell yourself, okay, I'm gonna absorb this place, whatever the situation is that I'm in.
Yeah.
Um, and then with the books, there are journal pages that people can write in and customize things. There's affirmations and gratitudes. There's word searches and uh, crossword puzzles having to do with travel. So everything about them is meant to sort of keep you in that travel mode and present.
No, I thought, as I've looked at and read all three of them and gone through all three of the books, I think they are a great, very very simple, very direct, and simple to read, but even more so simple to apply. So I definitely, hats off to you regarding this particular initiative, and the fact of what you wanted it to actually be able to do, to help the traveler who's on your trips, or maybe just listening about how to just practice being present and be mindful. And because as you made a comment, right, that when you go to France or go to Finland and you meet the local, they you're interested in them just talking about where they're at. Well, how do we do that when we're wherever our home is? Because someone may be coming to us from a different place, and they want to know about the local here. And for someone visiting us wherever we are, that's special and unique. If we're not being present in our own backyard, how would we ever be able to share those stories? Yes, I think, some degree, it's easier when I'm not away from my normal. When I'm away on vacation or something like that, maybe a little bit easier to see how unique and special that is. But I also can find that if I have my eyes wide open, I can find that in my backyard too.
No, absolutely. You may not get the travel part out of it, but yeah, I mean, I love when I meet locals in my hometown. If I'm downtown Chicago or something, and maybe I'm doing a tour, and I meet some locals, and I love to share my hometown with people that are not from here, whether
Yeah,
they're from the US or not. And so that's super important. Um, but that idea of, seeing these places through the viewfinder and putting that device down, because I should talk for myself. I'm always trying to multitask. So I sit down at the TV, I'm eating, I'm on my phone, who knows, I'm listening to something else, and I'm not doing any of them well. So, especially when we travel and we're going to some amazing food culture, which all my trips are too, I make food a big part of our trips. Um, it's it's getting to know what's local there, and learning about it, and because I think food is such a big part of travel, and I come from a restaurant background, so it's extra important to me. So I love to share the local foods, the unique things, market walks, and talking to chefs, and how do you buy this item at the market, how do you prepare it and cook it and even eat it, and those are things that fascinate me.
sure, sure. Yeah. Well, and I think, like you said, that is a huge part of the culture, is the few food, the drink, the music, what they do for entertainment. Those are all part of that culture, and about being able to appreciate that and be able to experience that, I think is key. Um, and I know, Ralph, there's a possibility in the near future that you may be looking at even developing another particular service. Yeah, maybe just plant some seeds with what that idea may be, and we know how that works. It may morph into something else, but what as you're brainstorming about what you might be doing in the future, so yeah, tell us a little bit about that, because I think it's another extension of the mindful traveler.
Yeah, so like I said, I've been organizing and leading tours around the world for 16 years now, and I would like to take this concept of mindful and intentional traveler and create some retreats around it, some international retreats where we actually go to, say, the 7th or the 11th century castle in southwestern France that we stay at on my France's Magical Dordogne trip, and we do some exercises having to do with mindful and intentional travel. But then we actually go, that would be at the castle. It's got 270 acres of grounds. There's all kinds of amazing places on the castle grounds. But then there would be day trips to nearby villages where we would actually go and put into practice the skills that we learned about mindful and intentional travel in the destination. There would be journaling and networking, camaraderie, learning from each other, some exercises, but it would be about honing these skills of becoming more mindful and intentional when we travel. The other concept that would go with that is I have an idea for an app that would be sort of a companion to the books and while you travel, where it would remind you to stop every hour or two or whatever timing you set. It would have inspirational quotes and different reminders and uh, potentially like guided imagery and peaceful music. And it would be like a relaxation app having to do with this mindful and intentional travel concept.
Interesting. Okay.
That's the big.
Yeah. I can definitely see similar to like the workout apps or the different apps that people use for different exercises that they're trying to implement, either from a meditation standpoint or from an exercise standpoint. Those reminders, because then if it's just as far away as your phone, it's easier to kind of set that up and because like anything, it's about this idea of how do I take the idea and implement it into actually doing it, and not just once or twice, but how do I turn it into like a daily to weekly exercise? So, well, Ralph,
Making it a habit for sure.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
I also
Well,
imagine there being some gamification in it too, or somewhere where there, challenges or social aspect to it where people are sharing their
sure.
experiences or perhaps tips and places to go and be more mindful. Um,
No,
yeah,
I like that idea.
yeah, thanks.
And that's not, that hasn't been created yet. That's more of, you're in the brainstorming place for that one, right?
Correct. I'm in the early stages of that, but I've been making a lot of progress and I'm excited about it.
Awesome.
Especially with AI and everything, because now you can actually build an app without any coding experience whatsoever. And
Gotcha.
so that's really interesting. Because I already have an app. Created an app about 14 years ago for photography called My Shot Lists for Travel, but I needed to partner with an engineer to code it.
Oh, okay.
At that time, there wasn't that capability of AI.
Sure, sure. So if someone was either interested in learning more about you, learning more about your books, learning more about a trip, what would be the best way for someone to reach out to you?
Yeah, so continentaldrifter.co is the hub of everything I do. It's not .com, .co. My email address is ralph@continentaldrifter.co if anyone wanted to reach out. But everything's there from all the trips I have coming up in the near future. I've got a YouTube channel called The Continental Drifter where people can see the trips that I've been on, a lot of the content that I've created, get a little bit of a feel for my personality, a lot of the podcasts I've been on, there's blog posts. So there's a lot of information. So that continentaldrifter.co is the hub. And that's where I'll be announcing my future retreats. And then also I am revitalizing the tour organizer training get paid to travel course that I created a while back, and I've updated it and re-released it. It's now just $499 for 14 hours of content if people wanted to learn how to do what I do, which is to organize and lead special interest trips. So
Gotcha.
it's all there.
Awesome. Well, Ralph, I always appreciate stories when you come back and we get to able to get together and appreciate your passion and energy for travel, but but probably even more than just the travel, it's the people and the culture that you experience when you do travel. So thank you for what you do and the invitation to bringing people along with, and so they can see how big and beautiful this world is. So
My pleasure. And perhaps you can put some links to the books in the show notes if you do that.
absolutely, we will definitely do that.
Mm.
So anybody who's listening, if you were inspired either from the mindful traveler from a book standpoint, how you might want to implement that at home, or if you are looking at planning a trip later this year or maybe even the next year, definitely check out the continentaldrifter.co and get a hold of Ralph, and I know you won't be disappointed. As always, thank you for being here. Go ahead, Ralph.
I'm sorry, if I could just mention one other thing. I also do customized tours. So if people can't necessarily travel on the dates that they see on my website for the trips that I'm leading, I can also put together a private tour for you and your family or group of friends to those destinations. And you get the same experience. I just wouldn't be on the trip, but it would be your trip customized for you. So that's another service that I offer.
Awesome. Thank you, Ralph. And is that also on the website too?
Yes, yeah, it's there, custom tours. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank
As
you.
always, thank you for being here. And if you think anyone might be interested in any of the things we talked about today, definitely share this and pass it along. And I look forward to seeing you next week.